Ready? Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I'll call our September 24th Select Board meeting to order. First item is approval of the agenda.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes requested? Any changes, Kathleen?
No.
Nothing added? Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, next is approval of the minutes of our August 27th Select Board meeting. Actually, September
I recommend
September 10th Select Board meeting.
Yep.
Moved and seconded. Are there any amendments to that?
No.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as drafted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, citizen comments. I think all three of you are here for items on the agenda. So Justin, if you want to come forward, next thing is the wine group's second-class liquor license. And is it Daedalus, or how do you?
Daedalus.
Daedalus.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Daedalus Wine Group is seeking the board's approval for second-class sale of beer and wine for off-site consumption, liquor license for a new retail location that's going to be on the second floor of the new Mill, of the renovated Mill Street building. Because it's still under construction, it would be similar to our case that we did at the last meeting for Matt Taco, because any approval would be subject to inspection approval. Are there any questions? You want to tell us what you're going to do there? I think this is a great chance that there's actually people watch this, so it's a little free advertising for you. I
Sure.
think we're just as excited to have that back up and running.
Yeah, we're partnering with Community Barn Ventures, who, as you know, are renovating the Stone Mill building and creating a multi-level, multi-faceted space there. So we're going to be on the second floor, which is going to be a shared retail space. So we're going to be one of the anchor tenants, and we'll be selling wine and cheese and maybe some charcuterie and stuff like that, stuff that goes with wine. And we'll be doing tastings there probably twice a month. So we're really looking forward to moving into this space, giving some people a break, driving all the way to Burlington to get to us, and being part of that shared functionality space. The third floor will be shared workspace, and the fourth floor is going to be actual Airbnb or residential units.
Yeah.
So anytime there's a mix of businesses or interests like that, there's a lot of cross-pollination that happens. So we're also looking forward to any kind of opportunities that might arise from that as well.
Yeah, I think we're all excited to see how that works. I think it's going to bring something new and some energy to that section of town, back to it, so it'd be great.
We've done a few pop-ups in the past month or so. I think there was the street fair, and there's been a lot of buzz. A lot of people are excited that will be coming. People coming to the store in Burlington are like, can't wait till you're in Middlebury. So it seems like a lot of people are looking forward to it, and so are we. Yeah.
Great.
I'll make a motion to approve the application submitted by, tell me again how you say it.
Daedalus.
Daedalus, yeah.
Daedalus, yeah.
Dallas?
Daedalus.
Daedalus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's a character from a James
Daedalus
Joyce
Wine
novel.
Group Incorporated for a second-class liquor license for its new retail location at 3 Mill Street, pending the successful completion of the required public safety inspections when construction is completed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments or questions?
No.
Hearing
But
none?
I mean, this is an irrelevant question, but the spelling of the name, shouldn't there be an A in there?
I thought the same thing. I was a classics major back in college, so I was familiar with the story of Daedalus and Icarus, and I thought he had misspelled it, but apparently it is a character from James Joyce novel. Jason.
Is it spelled D-E-D in?
According to Jason.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'm just
So
curious.
I agree with you.
Pardon me, but I just, okay.
Well, this is important stuff, come on.
The
Well,
internet
it's true.
says no A.
Okay.
Okay, so hearing nothing more, all in favor of approving the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Well, great. We'll look forward to a big grand opening sign out there.
Yeah,
Come down and try your wine and cheese.
hopefully in the next month or so, if everything goes well. Yeah.
What are you looking right now at for opening
I'm gonna have
date?
to check my copy of
Tentatively end of
Ulysses when I
October.
get home.
Oh, it's because it's this.
Yeah, hope
Yeah.
it goes well.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
That's
Appreciate it.
Eric, we got to you quickly. We promised we would get back to you as quickly as we could. So, I think I'm gonna turn this over to Kathleen, because we asked Kathleen, after your last time here, to get with staff and analyze and provide a recommendation, and, so,
So after some digging in the archives, came across the background for the connection fee policy and outlined the details of that in your in a memo in your packet. Particularly as Eric mentioned when he was here at your August 23rd meeting, our current connection fee is $400 per equivalent residential unit, or 210 gallons of wastewater, which calculated out to just over 700 ERUs, or a connection fee of $285,000. By looking at the possibility of providing some credit for existing wastewater discharge, which may go to the Purpose Energy facility, we were able to calculate, if the board is interested in that approach, a credit of $115,000 or so for uses. Some of those were just guesstimates. I know that Eric is working with Otter Creek Brewing on their discharge, which is 20,000 gallons per day. And so I included that in year one, and then I know that he wants to work with other beverage producers and dairy industry in the industrial park. So just drew out some hypothetical numbers on that. And then also to soften the impact, the town's policy provides for a phased implementation of the connection fee. So in your packet and on the screen is the hypothetical scenario that I drew up. Eric hasn't finalized what his request of the town is yet. This scenario provides for 150,000 gallon per day discharge permit.
what do you think, Eric?
Well, I certainly appreciate all the work that Kathleen put into this, and we had some back and forth discussions. And since we were here, not a whole lot's happened. It's only been a couple of meetings, but we did hand in our draft wastewater permit to Bob and got his feedback that we'll incorporate into the final version. I know you guys are probably in a tough spot, right? Because you have a policy and there's precedent. It's hard to change precedent, and I understand that. From my position, though, we're looking at a pretty steep fee that would be a wastewater impact fee for a project that's actually going to reduce the impact on your wastewater plant. So, as you consider that, I can see there's two different sides, and I guess I appreciate the decisions you have to make. I do especially appreciate the concept of reducing our flow by flow that's already going to the wastewater plant, Otter Creek especially, potentially with some of the hard cider waste as well, and even some of the Cabot waste. Although, as we discussed last time, a lot of the waste that we'll be putting down the drain will be waste that was otherwise trucked away from the industrial site. So that would be new load. But, you know, something like an abatement for some of the flow that's already been paid for, we would appreciate. The ability to stagger the fees is also important to us. I think we discussed last time that we have to plan for our ultimate scale to accommodate the ultimate scale of our customers. And somebody like Otter Creek is in a special situation because they've got multiple breweries, and this happens to be, in my opinion, their best. And I can imagine them moving some of their capacity from other locations to this location. And one thing that would help them do that is if their wastewater fees here are less than they are at other facilities, and I think that's something we can provide for them. But the point of that is their flow could grow from 20,000 to 90,000 gallons a day, and that's something our facility has to accommodate ultimately. Today we don't have to. So if there's a way that we can have a step function and acquire additional capacity in the future, that would be helpful. So it would reduce the impact on our facility from the beginning. The other thing that could be important for us when what's bringing this to a decision point now is we have to file our wastewater permits at some point, right? We can't move forward with our certificate of public good until we file the wastewater permits. We need to know what the number is that we're going to put in that box for what we're requesting for ultimate flow. And we know that someday in the future, we would like our flow to be 150,000 gallons a day, right, just to accommodate the growth in the industrial park. But today, we think that flow is going to be considerably less, potentially something like 60,000 gallons a day as we wait for that growth. If we can permit immediately for 150,000, but not incur the entire fee of 171,000 or whatever the select board ultimately decides our fee should be, that would be helpful for us. That way we won't have to go through the re-permitting process in the future, not only with the town, but also with A&R. So anyways, at this point, I think, I don't know of any other discussion points we could give, but we're looking forward to trying to build a project here in the town, and you know, we appreciate any leniency that you can provide.
Okay. Thoughts, anyone?
Well, I really appreciate this approach and that it seems like it's palatable for it to be phased this way. And I think it's important for us to consider equity with regard to the connection fee that
No, you
we've
just have
charged
to
other
move.
industrial
There.
users. You know, so I was wondering how you had come up with 15,000 in the first place, because it was like so off from what we were coming to with an evaluation of our policy.
So I think I yammered about that for a half hour. But more or less, I went through all the different scenarios for how you could assess a fee, and concluded that the thing that made the most sense was an episode as opposed to an impact fee, because we're actually reducing the impact on the wastewater treatment plant. Even though the flow might go up, the plant's not constrained by flow. The plant's constrained by organic load, and we're going to reduce the overall organic load, we'll reduce the phosphorus load, and we'll reduce the total solids load going to that plant just by treating what the brewery's already sending. You know, and even with the additional flow, it'll still have less impact on the municipal wastewater treatment plant. So charging a per gallon fee to me didn't make sense, and I thought, well, if it was an episode, it's kind of like a house, except for the pipe's a little bit bigger and the meter's a little bit bigger and there's more reporting. So I didn't know how to pick a number relative to $400, but I knew we had 15,000 in our budget for this, and that's how I picked that number.
Okay,
It was rather arbitrary.
okay. I do know that our facility has capacity, still it's not at full capacity, so, yes, you'd be helping us, but we do have capacity, and yes, we would hope for more growth, and yes, you're renewable, and that's all positive. But we lose some funds too from this by diverting it to you as well. So I know it's like kind of a wash for us too, so there's an advantage, and there's also a little bit of financial,
When you say lose funds, do you mean lose revenue?
yes.
Okay, so interestingly, if the surcharges are appropriate, which in discussion with Bob, I think they are, then those surcharges should cover the costs associated with that treatment. So for instance, a pound of organic load requires horsepower from blowers to dissolve oxygen into the aerobic system. And it generates a pound of sludge, which needs to be dewatered and hauled away. So that surcharge for organic load should cover the cost. And similarly, there's a total solids cost for sludge disposal. Phosphorus requires some chemical treatment. So if the surcharges are balanced appropriately, then although we might be reducing revenue, we should be reducing cost by the exact same amount, and it should be net neutral.
That's right, yeah.
But we would be freeing up organic load for additional growth in the industrial park and the rest of
Yes.
the town.
Yes. Okay.
So do we have any idea of how much you'll be reducing solids and organics in the load? Like, is there, so one thing I thought about was, we may not have some numbers, so maybe part of the phasing would be having some testing done and doing some evaluation and some analysis so that in phase 2, we could revisit, how we're looking at things based on, what you're actually putting into the stream and the strength of it. And maybe, when we say 210 gallons for residential, that's pretty strong waste going into the system. What I'm hearing is that yours wouldn't be that strong, right?
Well, so here's where those numbers come from. Let's talk about the brewery for a moment, okay? So they're 20,000 gallons a day. And what we're proposing is ultimate of 150,000 gallons a day. So that's 7.5 times the flow. But their organic load is around 5,000 milligrams per liter. And our permit limit's 250 milligrams per liter. So that's a factor of 20 more dilute. So if we have 7.5 times the flow, but 1/20th of the concentration, the net amount that actually gets to the wastewater treatment plant, even with all the additional flow that we bring in, is going to be less.
Yeah.
And the treatment plant has to think of it in terms of pounds per day. That's what they have to treat, right?
Yeah, although there's still some cost with the flow.
Right, and the flow is charged, I think is it $6.76 per 1,000 gallons?
678.
$6.78 per 1,000 gallons. So we'll still get that flow charge every month. That'll be on our bill. That's billed separately.
Okay. So, I guess what I'm thinking is, as part of a phased approach, I'd be willing to consider, an evaluation before phase 2 to really look at, does
Well, we would have to look at phase 2, depending on what the flow was coming from the existing facilities anyway, in order to calculate the allowance on the existing discharge.
So Heather, are you saying that, so maybe we enter into phase 1 with the proposal that Kathleen has presented to us, and then as we go into phase 2 and increase the load, at that point, we'll have more information about how our facility actually impacts the municipal plant.
Yes.
And then maybe if we can demonstrate through history and data that we've actually reduced the load to the plant, then there might be a basis for developing a different kind of fee structure.
Mhm.
I'm leaning that way, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. I guess,
We don't know.
yeah.
Can you complete your certificate of public good with this phased uncertainty that we're talking about?
I can, yes. So we would apply for the wastewater permits. One of the points that was important, the last meeting that Kathleen brought up, was if we can pay for this fee, at least the first phase of this fee, with the capital budget instead of the development budget. We're kind of kicking the can, but that's a different bucket of funds for the project. That'll help us do that. If we had to pay for that fee today, that would be challenging. But if we do it as we come online, then that's helpful. And that gets us to the point where we can file the wastewater permits and then file the certificate of public good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with the direction that Heather was going and thinking that if you could permit for that, and we had an agreement that it would be phased fees, and we could do a better job of defining exactly how that impacts the load at the plant. But also, I think we need to look at where you're getting, are you gonna be trucking in product to continue to keep your digester working 150,000 gallons, or are you relying on some of those others like Otter Creek's growth to get to your capacity? Because if you're gonna start bringing in a lot of additional truck traffic and everything, I might take a different view of it too.
That's a fair question. I think that you'll find that we're going to remove 20 trucks a day just from the brewery and the cheese plant.
Yeah.
And we won't be trucking in that many, so our net impact will be fewer trucks.
And those are the things that I think, as you develop and see what you're actually putting in, and what's that net impact on our wastewater treatment facility, then I think it helps us justify and rationalize a change in our policy. And those are things that I think will come online as you start to actually become operational. So I think the question is how do we phase it? Phase two is that, phase one is to start and get to start your project, and phase two, when's phase two? Maybe they're not year 1, 2, 3, maybe it's when you hit a certain capacity or something. I think we'd have to define what those phase triggers are.
Yeah, I think we would have to pick a number at the beginning that we know is going to accommodate all of the flows that we have contracted.
Yeah.
So that would be Otter Creek, Cabot, Whistle Pig. I know we're still negotiating with Vermont Hard Cider. That negotiation's changed recently where it looks like we may be getting more flow from them. But in that park, we're anticipating that we'll receive material from Aqua Vitae,
Yeah.
Stonecutter, App Gap.
So most of it's coming out of the park, and I think that's where,
We'll keep it in the park.
yeah, and that's where Kathleen has made a nice suggestion as part of the analysis is, why don't we go to that next step if we agree in concept to actually put some numbers together, because we may not be giving you enough credit for flow that's coming from other sources that you're diverting basically through your digester back into the same system. So I don't know, you may not be net, if you're not increasing the flow by 150,000, then if your net increase is 10,000 or something, I don't know what your net increase is going to be, but those are the numbers that we really need to give you better fee structure estimate, subject to further negotiation as we see then what the solids load is and how that impacts the capacity of the plant in the cost of the plant, operating the plant.
I think for us, we would want to pick a number like 80,000 gallons a day as a starting point. And I think there's 20,000 gallons a day from Otter Creek that we'd like to, if we're able to, credit against that. And then potentially 20,000 gallons a day from Vermont Hard Cider that we'd like to credit against that. So it would be a net increase of 40,000 gallons a day.
Okay.
And then as we see growth from Otter Creek and some I think with Cabot, it won't be as much growth they'll be bringing the same amount of milk, but I think there's certain byproducts that they truck off-site right now. Over time, they might decide, or operationally, are better to put into the drain. So we see growth from them, but that would be hauled waste.
And how does that impact, if he's permitted for 150,000, we have to reserve against that 150,000, but do we have the capacity so we can negotiate over time and basically work with 80,000 start?
Well, that's what I'm thinking, that we would basically do a memorandum of understanding over a period of time. How long you think that it'll take you up to get to 150,000 gallons per day, and outline the discussion we've had tonight in the review process and what might trigger those reviews.
Not to negotiate against myself, but something that you should consider in that is a sunset. I've seen towns where they give away hydraulic capacity.
That was
To people who never-
exactly my intent of the agreement, is to cap the amount of time that it could go on.
Yeah, I
Because we
think
don't want
that's
to keep it
smart.
reserved indefinitely if you're not going to get there, for instance. So, yeah.
Well, and in our case, as Eric points out, it's not only the hydraulic capacity, it's the pollutant loading that is a limiting factor on our permits as well.
Okay. Does it seem like we're
Going
giving
in.
you sufficient guidance for planning until we can get that memorandum of agreement?
I think so. So I think conceptually, we've got a few points here. One is that if we have some MOU that we start off permitting at 150,000, but we don't purchase that entire allocation right now. That comes in phases. There's a sunset on when we can either buy that remaining allocation or forfeit that remaining allocation. And there's a way to credit flow that's already being discharged. We're just diverting through our facility and pre-treating. And then the other thing is possibly when we look at increasing capacity in the future, we may try to make an argument for why the fee structure could be different for this kind of facility. Does that capture all the salient points?
That's what we've discussed, yeah. So if you're okay with that, then we'll ask Kathleen to take it to the next step for you. And hopefully that's enough so you can submit your permits, knowing that you're gonna have a reasonable solution here that works for your project. We'd love to see your project continue to move forward, so we don't want to be the cog in the wheel that trips you up.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate your consideration, and we'll look forward to building a interesting digester facility here in Middlebury.
Okay. All right, thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Dan, you've never gotten on so early.
Good evening.
I was waiting for something from the peanut gallery on connection fees, Dan.
I think it's quite reasonable, really. I do.
I actually saw as Eric was doing the recap, I saw a little bit of nod of
I did.
agreement.
I
You
was
got it.
watching
It's all
it.
good. I think it works. It's a good.
You think it works, Dan?
I think it works. I think it'll work.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully you've had a chance to read the Infrastructure Committee meeting minutes. Heather, do you want me to talk a little bit about the project at the police station, just for a few minutes?
Sure.
Or do you want to?
Yeah.
Is there time?
No,
Would you
we-
guys like an
we-
update?
We have time, and I think an update would be good, so if there's
Okay.
any questions, people can ask.
Sure. So Asher and Nicholas from VIA came and addressed the committee on where we are with the building reuse project at the old wastewater plant. Do you have this full picture coming, maybe? No stress?
Since you didn't give me a
Okay.
heads up on this.
So
Dan,
the point is that there are several pieces or structures that are part of this project. One is the storage building, which is on your bottom left side. That is the old control building for the wastewater plant. That's item number C, or letter C.
So those of you who are following along on your laptops, this is in the Infrastructure Committee meeting packet of September 12th.
I'm just going to go on a kind of a clockwise motion here. D is an explosive structure, so when the police department gets ammunition or confiscates other explosive, fireworks, you name it, they need a place to put that. And so that is a very, very small building that, in case something would happen inside, it kind of like falls apart and falls down rather than goes up in the air and goes boom. B is a cruiser parking, which was the sand filter building. And the next one over is the corner of the police department building is F. That's the infill for the insulation, those glass windows on the south and east side of the building. E is hazardous storage. It's a little brick building down there that was the sludge pumping, loading building from the digester tanks and the sludge storage tanks, which are the round green circles on the bottom of the page there. So that hazardous storage building is going to be for other things that the police department has to, or would prefer to not have in the building. Some of them might be plant material, confiscated plant material, or other smelly, dangerous things that they don't want in the building. So Asher and Nicholas went through building by building, and talked about some of the needs and from the police department, and some of the structural things that we're going to try to tackle here. So basically, the storage building, it's a very valuable building. I think the cost to renovate that building was around $90 a square foot versus well over $200 a square foot to build new. At one time, we were thinking about either raising the roof or lowering the floor. I think the way it's shaken out now is there's a small section of the concrete floor in the storage building that will be lowered, so when the mobile control or mobile command vehicle can get parked in there, they have to go up over the apron and back down, so that raises the back end as they move in, as it backs in. So they're gonna drop a section of that floor and not remove the whole floor because it's 9 inches thick, and that gets pretty pricey trying to remove that. By doing so, we don't need to mess with the roof as far as raising the roof or taking the what's called a box beam from the top section of the wall structure. So the roof will be renewed, but it will not need to be raised. So again, a little bit of cost savings there. So they went through a variety of things in that building and put some pricing, rough pricing to it. As I said, the explosive structure is simply, I think it's an 8 by 8 foot building that will basically, walls would fall down, blow down if there was some kind of a explosion in it. The bigger portion another big portion of the project is the cruiser parking. That was a sand filter building. Way it looks now is they're going to have the roof of that building slope towards the north. So that'll keep any snow or rain from falling in front of the door openings. There will be 4 garage door openings in that building, facing the apron to the south, if you will.
I think that was one less than we had originally hoped, but
Right.
when they did all the numbers and stuff, found that 4 was more reasonable, so just.
Yep. Yep.
I didn't know if you were gonna say that, but
Probably not, but thank you. And they will have garage doors that go up and down too. Maybe jump.
Sorry, Dan.
Yep.
Is it in this part where it showed kind of the elevation pictures of that building? Because I thought it was,
This is like totally huge, this document.
oh, right there.
Yeah.
Right. So I
There you
thought it
go.
was, they came up with a unique way to deal with the snowfall in the front of the building, the way the building is currently designed. It didn't require redoing the whole roofing system. They found a way to solve it, and so I thought it was, again, a little bit of cost savings there, so. They're
Yeah.
building, so basically where the front, see where that man door is in the front, they would build up there and then slope the building to the back, and then we won't have the snow pile up in front of where you're driving in the doors, so.
Yeah, they would have had to beef up the truss structure to accommodate what was originally thought was having it pitched some towards the front with what do they call not a gambrel. Can't think of the roof term at the moment. Anyway, it's like basically a half truss that move all that snow load to the back, so it was a cheaper alternative. Again, as Heather said, 4 doors versus 5 since they created this drawing. The police department building itself is where those glazing units are on the south and east side. They're going to infill those, but basically they put a metal panel in front of the glass, or behind the glass, so it kind of matches some of the architecture that's there now. And then that would all be insulated behind that to the room side, be covered in drywall. So at the top, you would have like clerestory windows, similar to, I'm not sure if they're across the top here. And so significant heating savings for doing that.
And I think the key there is that we had originally estimated infilling those windows with concrete blocks for about $25,000. With this approach, we're looking at closer to $7,000 or $8,000.
7?
7 or 8.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see a return, you know, that was originally a initiative of the Energy Committee and trying to save some energy there. We'll see a return on that investment sooner too with this design. And I think it will, I think it will look good. I think it's a good alternative too.
We'll be ready for electric cruisers now, that they have a warm place to warm up.
And then the last little piece was, I mentioned, that little storage building of hazardous materials on the south side of the parking lot. Not much to do that, but it's still a thing little building that'll work great for Tom, to get rid of some of that materials, get it out of the police department building. So that's kind of the short story of it. I have all kinds of information, not to distribute, but if you want it, I can get it to you. In the next infrastructure meeting, Brent Rakowski from Otter Creek Engineering is going to come and talk about the drainage, surface drainage, and below grade drainage with a committee, and go through that process.
That was kind of my question. The only question that I had is, what's your preference on dealing with that basement area that it sounded like there was a number of options?
Yep. I don't want to make you bring up that other drawing, but if you have it, can you go down to the one that had the control building on it, maybe?
I'll try.
There's where the tanks are, the small tanks off to the south side of that building, they're gonna knock part of those walls down. And some of that is gonna be retained to keep the soils back away from the control building basement. So once some of those walls are taken down, then the rain falls, hits the dirt, and will run around the building on either side. There will be a wall built in the basement, what we consider the basement of that building, to where it's the pipe galley. It's the part that's exposed now, and that's going to be part of the I want to call it the Otter Creek package of solving the drainage issues.
Yeah.
And so we have to make sure that there's any loads when we do backfilling, that does not impact the foundation of that building. So there has to be a wall built below grade, like a foundation wall, to stop that from happening. So that's part of the drainage solution, and he'll talk about that in October.
Okay. Yeah, because like it was discussed during your committee, I would be very concerned about putting all that money in and then having a little pond with all that moisture coming up through to the equipment and stuff.
Right, right. So, yeah, they've got a pretty good handle on it, so
Okay.
the committee will hear it, and then we can bring it back to
Okay,
you too.
super.
Any other questions on it? Okay. All right. So the other two items were requesting an award of a contract for a water main project out on Route 116. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Dow Pond next to the old Specialty Filaments building. You notice the state has lowered the water level in that pond. There's a culvert that crosses underneath 116, state-owned, of course, and have been worried about that thing is gonna, would blow out Route 116, so that's why they lowered the water. So they're going to do this project in-house, and therefore asked us to be involved with engineering a water main relocation, because our water main is above that culvert as it runs parallel to 116. So next summer, they want to replace that culvert, and then therefore our water main has to move. So this engineering proposal is from Green Mountain Engineering to do the design work for moving that water main. Their proposal is for $11,100, and that's just to get us through the design phase. Does not include, inspection time, because that's unknown at this point. So one of the things we're gonna look at is,
You got it.
there you go. So, right about there, that's good. When we did the chlorine contact project some years ago, it comes up from our well down here, and it came out across the field. Water used to come out into the field here. We moved it over here with a chlorine contact project. Right now, we have a termination point where the water turns around and goes back through the town that way. This project is right here, and our water main is on this side of the street. We're gonna have to bring it to this side of the street, and then instead of jumping back to one other side of 116, we're considering running it right back down to here. So we only have one crossing under 116 instead of two. That's gonna be part of the design work to see how that can work for us. The state will pay for a portion of the project that is within their limits of their work, which may be only a couple hundred feet, but they will be a small partner in the design and a small partner in the cost to move it. As we go further south and try to reconnect into our existing main down there, that's gonna be, all on us. So this is asbestos cement pipe. It is, I'm not sure, but it's probably about 50 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. Another 10 years, probably getting near the end of its life. So it's not bad timing, in other words, to get rid of this. So anyway, I'm requesting the board to approve Green Mountain Engineering's proposal for $11,100, and we'll design it over the winter and do it in the summer.
I'll make a motion to award a contract to Green Mountain Engineering for the engineering design services for the Route 116 water main project for a total cost of $11,100.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on this?
Well, I can see that this is an example of taking advantage of when work is being done to get something else done, right? And that's why you're proceeding with this, even though we have so many priority projects. Yikes.
Yeah. Timing was not good, but yeah. It's our water main's in there right away, and so it's time to move it.
Does it
We do
have an impact on delaying something else that we just have to live with?
I don't,
Well,
Probably.
probably, but
Yeah.
right now I don't know that we can say what exactly or when, and I mean, we could choose to just move what they'll cover and not do the other stuff, but then we're just probably kicking the can down the street on that. And
Yeah.
because I think they'll take out what's there and put it back as part of their project, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily make for a good situation for us.
Right.
Well, and right now, we're just approving the engineering. We'll get some
Right.
cost estimates and,
Yeah.
and determine really what's the impact on the greater budget.
Right.
And we can make that decision. So right now, what we're approving is the engineering, which needs to be engineered anyways, if we're gonna move the section that we have to move.
Okay, all right.
Did this particular section fall anywhere on our list of water priorities, or?
No.
Oh, okay.
It was out there, but quite a ways.
Okay.
Yeah, Priority 5, probably.
Yeah, it might have been a little further down it.
Okay. So, do we need a motion?
Okay, so if are there any other questions?
Oh, we have the motion already.
We have the
Yeah.
motion and seconded.
Sorry.
So if there are no other questions, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay.
That was an aye for me, too.
Okay.
Sorry about my phone.
Okay, the second item is a request to award a bid to Acker Excavating for a replacement of a catch basin and some other minor work at the corner of Court Street and Charles Avenue. I'm sure if you've driven down Court Street a while, you've seen cones and barrel and whatnot at that intersection. There was a concrete basin there that's totally disintegrated and fallen in. And so this project is to replace that basin, connected to the existing 24-inch concrete pipe. It'll be a 5-foot diameter basin. And then across the street of Charles Avenue by the gas station, there's a frame and cover that needs to be adjusted, actually be lowered, so the water, if you never notice water ponds in that intersection, we're going to get rid of that at the same time. So we put this out to bid. We got one bid, and that was from Acker. It's reasonable for other work that that company's done for us, and they did good work, so requesting the board to approve a contract to Acker Excavating for $13,900.
I'll move to award a contract to Acker Excavating for the Court Street and Charles Avenue drainage structure replacement project for a total cost of $13,900.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions on that item?
I just have one. You know, so when they create this, Dan, is it flush with the road so that if cyclists are going over the grate, it's smooth in riding? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, there might be that little dip about that half inch or so. So when the water gets off the asphalt, it actually gets in the grate. Yeah.
So
It's
is it
not
like-
going to be a dip.
Is it like what we have on Charles Ave? Like those?
Probably similar. Yeah.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Yeah.
I know that it's something that we pay attention to
Yeah.
for cycling on the shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Jen?
Hello. So I'm here, oh, actually, Kathleen does such a better intro than I do. No? Okay.
It's all you, yeah.
So I'm here tonight to ask for your approval of submitting a municipal planning grant application. These municipal planning grants come up every fall, and they're one of the few grant programs that actually pay for, planning work to create bylaw revisions. And it makes sense that that when we're done with our downtown master plan in summer of next year, that we just hit it hard with a bylaw revision to correct some of the things in downtown that could be better. So that, if somebody comes along to develop the EDI site, they can go as high as they want, or they're not plagued by parking counts that are better for a suburban area than an urban area, just little things like that. And then also, we're going to be doing so much work to get people's temperature in terms of visualizing more density in the downtown area and mixed uses in the residential gateways, that it'll be nice to have some zoning regulations that make all those visions come true. So zoning being one of the easiest tools at our disposal to implement the downtown master plan, it makes sense to line us up with some funding so we can start doing that when it's done.
Makes sense. I'll move to approve the submission of the application for 20,000 for the FY 2020 municipal planning grant application, including our local match of 2,000, to fund exactly what you said.
Great.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments on that? I'm excited to see you looking forward, looking out, and thinking of what's the next steps. I think we're moving forward and doing good stuff here, so appreciate your efforts and the support you're doing to make it, for economic development. Some of that's really some things that we can impact in development, and so.
Do we
All in-
also need to move to sign the?
I think we can do it in two different
Yeah, one of
things.
them
We do them separate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Would you care to make the second
I'll
motion?
move to sign the municipal planning grant resolution.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So next is, we have to set the penalty amount for late homestead declaration filings as required by 32 VSA Section 5410. And I'll have Kathleen walk us through that.
Okay, each year homeowners are required to submit their homestead declarations by April 15th. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen all of the time, and the town is enabled by statute to assess a fee for that. In the past, the town, and so the result of not filing the homestead is that the homeowner's tax bill is not taxed at the residential rate, it's taxed at the non-residential rate, and they don't have their homestead rebate calculated into their tax bill. So that puts us, when they finally get their tax bill, they realize they haven't filed their homestead for the year, and it requires a correction. We would just like to make that correction and not assess our homeowners a penalty on that. And the board has waived the penalty in the past, and we're asking you to do it again. We just didn't know that it was every year that the board had to waive the penalty. We thought it was a one and done.
Gotcha.
So I'm an example of that happening to me this year. My accountant forgot to file the homestead, and I did not notice it until I got my tax bill, and gave me a heart attack. Brian said my taxes was going down by doing it. So, but Jackie was kind enough to help me file the amendment. So, yeah, it's a good idea to do it on time.
So maybe Farhad will abstain from this one.
So, about how many do we, how much of a burden is it on Jackie's department? Or do we see a lot of it, or is it a pretty small?
I don't know exactly.
I think the responsibility is on the taxpayer to file.
Right.
If they,
Just
let's say if
move-
they missed this October deadline, I think the 1st of October or something, then it's on them. I don't think the town employees have anything to do with it.
Right, but the town has to fix has to fix the tax bill and
Right.
so
Yes.
there is some
If they file,
town,
yeah.
some town staff
I
associated
don't know
with.
what percentage of people miss this also. I don't know how many people.
I don't think it's a large number, like in the 20
Okay.
range.
Yeah.
So we're not, Jackie doesn't see a huge burden from this, that some fees
Right.
would help cover the cost of,
I think
No,
it's one of those
It's tiny, and it's not,
uh,
it's goodwill
insult to
not to.
injury
yeah.
Yeah.
kind of
Yes,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
You've missed it, you've had to hassle with it.
Mhm. I mean, we do have to pay that first quarter anyway, while you're waiting for things
Oh,
to
yeah.
be, so the town is still collecting. So I'll move that the select board agree to waive any municipal late filing penalty for homestead declarations that were due on April 15, 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Is that the right year?
Okay.
Yeah.
Lindsay, check warrants, have you got them or?
All right.
Farhad's got them.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve total expenditures in the amount of $2,428,942.56, out of which $2,325,136 goes to account payable, and $103,806.56 goes to payroll, ending 09 of 07, 9/7 of 19.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen with the town manager report.
So good news, the Friends of Middlebury Hockey were successful on their state buildings and grounds grant for recreation facilities for $15,000. They applied for $25,000 through the board. And then secondly, I'm going to do an update on the purchase of winter sand for the 2019-2020 season. Based on his analysis of winter sand bids that the town has received from FY16 to FY19, showing J.P. Carrera and Sons as the consistent low bidder, DPW Operations Director Bill Kernan has recommended that the town forego the bid process and continue procuring winter sand from Carrera as a recurring purchases exemption under the town's purchasing policy. So I'll have Bill review that each year, but that is the plan going forward.
And do we have to have a motion and approve that, or how's that work?
I was just simply informing you that we were going to take that route under the purchasing policy.
Okay. They better not get too spoiled. No.
Are we gonna have an agreement or a memorandum of understanding on percentage increase each year? We gonna work something out there?
With Carrera,
Yeah.
they have been the same price for the past 3 years, I think.
I think that Bill will review it each year
Okay.
with them and see if there's any change in the market.
Right, and
Perhaps
then-
there would be a new bidder. He did go to previous bidders to see if they were interested in submitting a bid, and they weren't even interested in bidding this year. It
Okay.
was part of the issue.
Seems fair.
Okay.
Then
May we
Couple of-
not need it.
The picnic pavilion is open at the Recreation Center on Thursday, September 19th. The Parks and Recreation Department officially opened the new picnic pavilion at the Recreation Park and expressed its gratitude to the Middlebury Lions Club for the funding source and driving force behind the project, as well as local contractors and suppliers for their contributions to the project. To Bishop Excavating for doing site work at a discounted cost before the project began, Pete Bania and the team from Morton Building for designing and constructing the pavilion, Donnie Sargent and his crew from Sargent Concrete and Construction for pouring and completing the slab at a discounted labor rate, and J.P. Carrera and Sons for providing concrete at a discounted cost. Additionally, the Town of Middlebury Highway crew provided support in the form of machinery and manpower during construction and doing the remedial site work after the project. Okay, And Judy Wire-Groves asked me to remind you that you can learn more about the emerald ash borer and how it threatens ash trees here at the town offices on Wednesday, October 2nd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And finally, the board has received a letter from Richard Cole of Butternut Ridge Drive expressing concern about the Randall property, which has fallen into disrepair, a little bit less unsightly than the Bruce Motel, lacking a good solution for that from what we have right now. We're investigating the possibility of an ordinance or some other route to address these type of properties going forward, and I'll report back to the board on that.
Which property is that?
It's the Randall property on Butternut Ridge Drive.
Yeah,
Where's that?
the fire.
That's at, where the Case Street Community House is? There's
Yes.
a little residential development on Butternut Ridge Drive, just opposite that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. And I wasn't able to make it to the picnic. I had another engagement, but I swung by. That's beautiful.
It was
Facility.
beautiful. That was a good,
That's a nice
that was a
facility.
good turnout, right?
Perfect turnout. And
Yeah.
the number of participants exactly fit in the pavilion building.
Well, good. It's a nice addition to that area.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it for a number of years. It's nice to see it come through. Okay, board member concerns. Lindsay?
I was just gonna express my appreciation for the Department of Public Works, because every time I think I've noticed something and I bring it up to Kathleen, they're already on it. A light went out on Route 7, and I thought for sure I was the first one to see it, and came here, climbed up all the stairs breathlessly, mostly because I'm just out of shape. And Kathleen called Bill, and he already knew about it. By the time I drove back, 1 mile, it was already fixed. So
That's service, huh?
it's
Yeah.
service. That's really amazing.
Okay. Victor?
So, just a couple of quick things. Kathleen, I couldn't make it to the picnic for the pavilion either. But Lynn Morris had some great photos, and I didn't know, like, for town meeting or whatever, if you needed some photos, I was just gonna let you know that. And then I wanted to point out the picture that Kathleen's brought up on the screen. A big thank you to Bill and to Kathleen and probably Jackie some, and then of course Chris Robbins. But she and I and Bill set up this display in the National Bank of Middlebury window on Monday about our water system and trying to get some education. And so I hope that anyone watching and the board would also stop by and take a look. And again, just big thank you to Chris and Kathleen and Bill for their big part in getting that set up. And
Heather, I've already had people tell me about this display, like how awesome it is.
Great.
Just wanted to let you know.
Great. Well, we had people stopping while we were setting up and reading while we were trying to get it set up on Monday. So, and I think that's all. We have a Creek Road meeting Thursday morning if anyone's interested.
Okay, thank you, Heather.
And just on that Creek Road, we have set up a library of Creek Road documents on the website.
Thank you.
Where is that?
It's under committees, or under
Committees.
task
Task
force.
force.
And then,
Okay, I see it.
and then there's, that's Creek Road Task Force. Somewhere in there, it's under task force.
Not there.
Committees,
Document
there's a
library.
task force on the bottom, and
Yeah.
then Creek Road Task Force, and then our document library and our agenda and minutes. So, thank you to Chris and Kathleen for getting that all set up for us.
There's just a few documents there.
Just a few. We're working hard to increase it.
Laura?
Well, Friday was the global climate strike, and this week is a whole week of climate action, very important global. And we did have amazing attendance in Middlebury at a rally that was at the new College Park, and you could see that coverage in the Monday edition of the Addison Independent. So I'm really impressed at how our community did come out for that and how we continue as a town to really push for a reduction of our carbon footprint. We're sitting in a net zero town office building. Our new construction is very thermally efficient. We just talked about the police station. I'm very concerned about transportation, because we know that that's a huge wedge of our carbon footprint. So that's why I'm very excited about the rail bridge construction project and the planning that's going to take place around mitigation of traffic, because it's going to be also having the benefit of reducing carbon footprint, like the things that we will be doing to make it easier for people to access the downtown without cars is going to help us, reduce our carbon footprint. Those will last. So we're talking about increased shuttle bus service. We're talking about bike parking. We're talking about, just different ways of accessing without cars, single occupant car use. So to that point, next week is the International Walk and Bike to School Day. So that's October 4th, and we're encouraging students to get rewarded for walking, biking, or busing, using their school bus or the Actor bus to get to school. And I know that our racks at the high school are full. They've added 2 racks, actually, bike racks at the high school. So we know that the effort from the elementary school is trickling up in terms of biking to school, and that's exciting to see. I'm really proud of Middlebury for making those continued advancements, and I'm glad that we're looking into electric vehicles, like the full spectrum of electric vehicles, from cars to bikes and everything in between. And we're looking at our ordinance right now at the Public Health and Safety Committee to make sure that we're ready for that full spectrum of vehicles and telling them where they can safely go and not interfere with pedestrians or regular bicyclists. So that came up yesterday. And at another time, I hope on our agenda that we could do a fuller debriefing on the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting that we had yesterday, where we spent most of the time talking about homeless and vagrant and transient population that has seemed to explode in Middlebury and is stressing a lot of our services. So we want to be a compassionate community, but we are really struggling to meet the needs of that population. So maybe we can talk about that more in the future, soon.
We'll look and see what the next meeting's calendar looks like. How full is that?
October 8th is looking
Is that?
robust compared to our recent meetings.
It's going to be yours too, because I will be out of town.
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate your confidence in my ability.
The utmost. Farhad?
Nothing from me.
Okay, so I guess the only thing, next meeting, I will be out of town for business, and Nick will be back. I checked with Nick. He'll be here for it, so I think you'll be only down one.
Okay.
And so, you don't get too used to all these early meetings. It's going to gear right up here pretty soon. So this is like the 4th early meeting in a row. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn at 8:09.
Thanks for staying.
Well, that's gonna be a tough